I have a few things to comment on that reflect not only on the good work that we've done, but the work that's in front of us. So the challenge for the cities in Washington State, as well as around the nation, will be buffeted by winds of change. And those really come from a number of areas. There will be demographic change that will change the very face of the cities that we work with. There's climate change, which will have and is having profound changes on the world that we live in. Technology changes, and in the case of technology changes, those take the form of cyber crime, cyber attack, as well as opportunities to use these tools for communication and to do many of the things that we do in our world. There are social changes, and we've talked about those this week, dealing with diversity and social equity, health, mental health, housing, and human services. And they are changing what's happening on our streets. Changes that we could not have imagined even 5 years ago are now taking place on our streets, and they're requiring different responses from our first responders. All of these are affecting infrastructure. And infrastructure and the need to maintain and build new infrastructure is essential to building healthy communities and healthy economies. And it requires a long-term thinking that is unfortunately sometimes lacking in the political world, but it's not lacking at the city world. We can't rely on the federal government or the state government to bail out, and as Carolyn Coleman said in her comments, the cavalry is not coming. It's us, and we need to step up to deal with these issues. And sadly, Washington, D.C. and Olympia are embroiled in red and blue Crips and Bloods politics. They are often too invested in the fight to see and take advantage of the opportunities. What sets us apart as city leaders is that we put governing above winning. There are Democrats and Republicans and independents in this room. But as city leaders, we're invested in finding solutions. We don't let partisanship get in the way of citizenship. It's what we do. We solve problems. The task is then ours to educate our community and our leaders. The elected leaders in Washington, D.C. and Olympia could do well to model the behavior that you exhibit every day in solving problems. And ultimately, in the long run, their success depends on our success. Cities are where most people live and work and play. It's where most jobs are created. It's where people are educated. And cities are where culture, art, and wealth are created. Infrastructure, as you know, is the foundation to all of it. Water, wastewater, surface water, transportation, energy, all of those elements are essential for healthy communities and healthy economies. In this room are the leaders of the state of Washington. We possess the skills and the will to get things done, and we understand that infrastructure and building healthy communities and healthy economies is not about the next election, it's about the next generation. We understand that tough votes need to be taken, and we're not afraid to take them when we know that it will result in generational change. We are building healthy communities and healthy economies for people we will never know and never meet. You know that 1995 was not that long ago, and 2035 is not that far away. Healthy communities depend on our understanding that this is about generational change. It's not about tomorrow. It's about a lot of tomorrows. What makes us strong is our commitment to do the right things right. And I really enjoyed all the students' comments, but I made a note of one. I'm sure I can't get her name quite right. It was one of the difficult ones, Nandina Senjenic, because she said, we need to model that behavior. We need to be the people that we want to be. As we go forward with the next steps of the Strong Cities campaign, we have an opportunity to lead by example. We have a great story to tell, and Strong Cities campaign is all about telling that story. In October of last year, Mayor John Nearing, who's a member of your AWC board, and I carpooled down from the Snohomish County area to the meeting. The meeting was all about transportation. And many of you remember, as you do even this moment, that we were wrapped around the axle in terms of what the Republicans and Democrats were talking about in terms of transportation. And we had quite an exercised discussion at that meeting, and then John and I drove back and talked about it. Now, John and I have known each other for, easily 10 plus years and have deep respect for one another. I know that John's a moderate Republican, and he knows that I'm a moderate Democrat. And in the course of in the traffic, it was probably a good 2 hours getting back to Everett. We had a chance to visit, and in the course of that, we said, well, if someone put us in a room, could we solve this problem? And we both looked at each other, and it was like, well, hell yes. That wouldn't be hard. Would we get everything we wanted? No. Would we find a way to get the problem solved because we were invested in getting the problem solved? Yes. I don't know what's going to happen in Olympia, and neither do you, but what I do know is that the Strong Cities campaign is already having positive results. In Spokane area, the Northeast mayors, Republicans and Democrats, got together with their ed board and did a great job of educating that ed board so that they now know what cities need. They now know what we need for infrastructure, and that ed board wrote a great editorial. The same thing happened in Snohomish County, where the cities in Snohomish County got together, met with the Everett Herald, and now they've written a series of editorials. They write almost every week, or certainly several times a month, on these subjects. In Thurston County, the cities got together and they're doing the same thing. In Olympia and in Washington, D.C., they know who we are, they know what we want, they know we're not going away, and we are making inroads. Yesterday, Congressman Larson announced a rail safety initiative, and in his announcement, he credited the work done by this association as to why that was so critical and that it helped him understand the importance and the challenges of moving long trains with potentially hazardous cargo through very urbanized areas. That's thanks to you. Yesterday in Washington, D.C., a similar initiative was put forth by the Senate. Both of our senators were on board, and many of you were in D.C. earlier this year, and you heard their commitment. They get and they are hearing what we're saying. We need to tell our stories in our communities, and by that I mean in our neighborhoods, to our local news organizations, not just to Olympia and D.C. We have great stories to tell. And so my challenge to all of us is to help the people of Washington State understand why cities matter to them. All of us need every one of you to tell that story. And that will be the task that we will take on this year. I'm confident that you will do a good job because the results we're already seeing that. And I know from the hundreds of conversations I've had this week with all of you, I know how committed you are to do that. So our job as your AWC board and as staff is to help develop and refine the tools to give you the messages that you need to take to your community, to your press, to your legislators. Finally, I just want to say that I've heard, and I know you have too, many times as we've been meeting with our legislators, the comment that, well, I'd like to help, or I'll do what I can do, but this is where the caucus is. I don't care where the caucus is. This is what's happening on the ground today. We need to model that behavior. We need to explain gently but firmly that's not an acceptable answer. We need to do what we need to do to build the next generation, and it doesn't matter what party you're from. It matters what they need. So I ask you all to take up that mantle and do that job in this next year and the years that follow, because the folks that have worked real hard to build strong cities, we, all of us, have done that work, and it's now time to take it to the next level.